Much of what we understood about the physics of the nature of reality before the 1900s was categorized under the concept of Newtonian physics, or what we call classical physics. Now think of classical physics, or Newtonian physics, as the physics of the predictable. And when Newton had his realization when the apple fell from the tree, the realization basically said, things are moving in a smooth and continuous fashion, and when the apple falls from the tree, as long as I know the distance it's falling, I can determine how long it's going to take to land. And because of Newtonian physics, we can shoot a rocket to the moon with accuracy. You'll know the exact time it takes for you to travel from Los Angeles to London. We can determine then the trajectory of planets rotating around the sun. And because of Newtonian physics, we have enough understanding to be able to navigate in our three-dimensional world. So think of Newtonian physics as the physics of the predictable, or the physics of the very large. Now, at the turn of the 19th century, Albert Einstein and Max Planck began to study the subatomic world. And what they were interested in doing was, just like an apple falling from a tree, they wanted to begin to disturb the electrons that were existing around the nucleus of the atom. And all of us have seen that classical model of the atom, where you have the atom being like the sun, and you have all these electrons rotating around it. And that was the model that was existing up until that point. When they began to disturb that electron and add energy to it, they expected that the electron would move towards the center of gravity, towards the nucleus of the atom, just like an apple falling from the tree. That it would fall in a very smooth and continuous fashion, very predictable way. But what they discovered is that the subatomic world of those electrons behaved very differently than the very large world of apples falling from trees. The electron would gain energy and lose energy. Then it would gain energy and lose energy. And instead of it falling from the tree in a smooth, continuous way, like rolling down a hill, it was more like a ball dropping downstairs, gaining energy, losing energy, gaining energy, losing energy. And they realized that the subatomic world no longer behaved like the large world. So then they began to try to measure the electron. And what they discovered was that that model of classical physics, where it said the nucleus of the atom was like the sun and the planets rotating around it, isn't actually the truth. The way it really is that there's a nucleus, and then there's a cloud of energy called the wave. And in that cloud of energy, the electron could exist anywhere. Now let me give you an example. If you blew up the nucleus of the atom to the size of a Volkswagen Bug, the electron would be the size of a pea. Now, where that electron could exist would be the size of the state of Utah, or twice the size the country of Cuba. Now, there's a lot of possibility of where that electron could be. When the field of probability is existing, the electron exists as possibility or potential. So when they began to measure the electron, they began to look for it, all of a sudden that energy collapsed into a particle called collapsing the wave function, or a quantum event. Subjective mind, for the first time, had an effect on the objective world, and the observer effect was born. Now here's the cool part. The moment they took their attention off the electron and they no longer put their awareness on it, that electron, that particle, turned back into energy and turned back into possibility. Now you may say, well, yes, that observer effect, mind and matter, are intimately related on a subatomic level, but does it really affect our life in large-scale events? Does the observer effect only work for the tiny and not for the large? Well, maybe we're just poor observers, and maybe we can learn how to sharpen our skill of observation. So before we go any further, let's talk about the definition of the quantum field. Think of the quantum field as an invisible field of energy that exists beyond this space and time. There are no people there, there are no things, there's no place to go, there isn't even time. It's one infinite field of energy and information that has nothing physical or material, and you can experience the quantum field with your senses. So quantum physicists, for almost 100 years, have been trying to understand this unifying field, and in fact, they've given the name to the quantum field as the unified field, and they're interested in studying the mathematics of unifying all the forces that begin to cause order in our three-dimensional world. Think about the Big Bang. After the Big Bang, after that explosion, there was tremendous amount of order that was created after that explosion. If you observed an explosion that took place in this three-dimensional reality, there's typically disorder. And after the Big Bang, we have order, some unifying field, some intelligence that's governing the nature of reality. So then, what are the forces then that begin to unify all of these different elements to create such order? Quantum physicists have come up with all different theories to begin to understand with the mathematics how all this energy works to create such order. So think of the unified field as an invisible field of energy that connects and organizes everything physical. We've talked in previous episodes about living by the hormones of stress. And when we're under the gun of the fight or flight nervous system and the brain and body are aroused, the very chemicals of stress heighten our senses and we become materialists, perceiving our world in three-dimensional reality. So then when we feel the chemicals of stress and we're living as matter, local in space and time, then we feel separate from everything material or physical. So think about the three-dimensional reality as giving us the illusion of everything separate. In the unified field, the quantum field, the zero-point field, that universal energy that's governing and creating order in all of three-dimensional reality, that energy has nothing to do with separation. We would say that this energy is about connection, and everything in the material world is interacting with each other in terms of energy. So the physical reality we experience with our senses. If we can't see our dreams, we can't smell them, we can't hear them, we can't feel them, we can't taste them, they don't exist for us. But the quantum model of reality is a reality that exists beyond our senses. You can only experience it with your awareness. So then three-dimensional reality has everything that's material, has height and depth and width. The quantum field is made of energy, frequency, vibration, information, consciousness. It's the realm of thought. So then, if we're matter trying to change matter, it will always take time for us to manifest reality. Why? Because we live in a realm where there's an infinite amount of space. And we experience time by moving through space. And so here I am, Joe Dispenza, one point of consciousness, one point of awareness, and then I have my attention on another point of consciousness. Let's say my car. So if I want to go from one point of awareness to another point of awareness, I would have to move my body through space. And when I move my body through space, it takes time. So then based on my experience of the past and how fast I walk, I can determine about how long it's going to take me to get from one point to another point. So then here's me, Joe Dispenza, and then here's my dreams way over there. And most people then begin to try to predict when their dreams are going to come true. So they do that based on their past experience of linear time. So then their dreams are way out there, and now they have to move their body through space, matter to matter, every single day to arrive at their dreams. And of course, it takes time to do that. So if reality is both a particle and a wave, if it's both matter and energy, and we're functioning in this three-dimensional world and all of our attention is on everything material, and we understood from previous episodes that if you're living in the familiar past or you're living in the predictable future, then for the most part, you're living in the known. Now that sweet spot of the generous present moment is called the unknown, and that unknown is where all possibilities exist. Now let's demystify the quantum field. If you took away all the people, all the objects, all the places, you took away the sun, you took away the earth, the moon, the planets, the stars, the light from the stars, the galaxies, you took away everything material, what would you be left with? An infinite void of anything physical or material. And that fertile void, just because you can't see something, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that fertile void is filled with possibilities, filled with unknown experiences. So then how do we get from the known to the unknown? How do we get from the material world to the immaterial world? How do we get from the world of the senses to the world beyond the senses? How do we move from the world of the predictable to the world of the unpredictable? How do we move from three-dimensional reality into other dimensions or other realities? And I want to talk to you about the formula that allows you to get there. So in other episodes, we talked briefly about getting beyond the self. That most people spend the majority of their life living in separation instead of living in connection. And because they're feeling local in space and time as a body, then they're using their body to begin to create outcomes in their life. They'll spend the majority of their life developing an identity that's connected to knowing someone, to living somewhere, to owning certain things and living in certain places at certain times. And this becomes the autobiographical self that is stored in the thinking neocortex. So then when a person goes from a narrow focus to a broad focus, and they take their attention off of everything material, and they begin to open their awareness not to matter, but broadening their focus and tuning into energy or information or nothing material, the act of opening their awareness allows them to begin to change their brainwaves. And you learn then that if you do this properly, as you slow your brainwaves down, you begin to get beyond the analytical mind. And if you're not thinking about anybody, if you're not feeling the pain in your body, if you're not thinking about checking your text, if you're not thinking about where you need to go or where you're sitting or how much time you have, you would begin to no longer activate the circuits in your autobiographical thinking brain that has everything to do with everything known in your life. And as you begin to suppress this part of your brain, the seat of your identity, your personality, and you slow your brain waves down, as you do that and you begin to tune into energy, that unifying field, its signature is oneness or wholeness or greater levels of order or connection. And as you begin to become aware of it and put your attention on it, and as you begin to sense the vastness of that empty void, as you begin to focus on nothing but energy, if you can begin to keep your attention on it, it will begin to create more order or more coherence in your brain. So not only do you change your brain waves, but as you learned, you create more order and more coherence because the brain's attention is on something that's highly orderly. And we could say that the moment you take your attention off your body, you go from a somebody to a nobody.